right, folks. Tucker's back in the building. Tucker is back in the building, folks. Appreciate you tuning in for this one. We're going to be watching Tucker's first episode he's put out since his exodus from Fox News. This is Tucker on Twitter, episode 1. I'm curious. I'm curious what he decides to get into. We just seen a small segment, and it looks like he talks about aliens a little bit. But I'm curious if this episode is really going to tell us why he got kicked off of Fox or what they didn't want him to cover on Fox. So, it's, you know what I mean? Is this first episode going to be, all right, this is basically where they didn't want me to go, so we're going right into it. I wonder if it's that type of situation.
Hey, it's Tucker Carlson. This morning it looks like somebody blew up the Kakhovka Dam in southern Ukraine. The rushing wall of water wiped out entire villages, destroyed a critical hydropower plant, and as of tonight, puts the largest nuclear reactor in Europe in danger of melting down. So, if this was intentional, it was not a military tactic, it was an act of terrorism. The question is, who did it? Well, let's see. The Kakhovka Dam was effectively Russian. It was built by the Russian government. It currently sits in Russian-controlled territory. The dam's reservoir supplies water to Crimea, which has been, for the last 240 years, home of the Russian Black Sea Fleet. Blowing up the dam may be bad for Ukraine, but it hurts Russia more. And for precisely that reason, the Ukrainian government has considered destroying it. In December, the Washington Post quoted a Ukrainian general saying his men had fired American-made rockets at the dam's floodgate as a test strike. So really, once the facts start coming in, it becomes much less of a mystery what might have happened to the dam. Any fair person would conclude that the Ukrainians probably blew it up, just as you would assume they blew up Nord Stream, the Russian natural gas pipeline, last fall. And in fact, the Ukrainians did do that, as we now know. It's not like Vladimir Putin is anxious to wage war on himself.
Wait a second there, Tucker. Wait a second there, Tucker. Wow. All right, I'm confused. So Tucker is literally going to tell us he believes the Ukrainians are the one that pulled off the Nord Stream 2 attack? There's no way the Ukrainians are sophisticated enough to pull off the attack on Nord Stream 2. And I can't recall the journalist's name right now, but I'm pretty sure a well-renowned Pulitzer Prize winning, if that means anything, journalist broke the story that Biden is the one that did the Nord Stream 2. So, well, what is Tucker talking about here? That's a little weird. It's a little weird. I mean, could the Ukrainians pull off blowing up the dam thing? For sure. But the Nord Stream pipeline in the middle of the ocean? No. No. Could Biden do them both? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Oh, but that's where you're wrong, Mr. and Mrs. Cable News consumer. Vladimir Putin is exactly that sort of man, the sort of man who'd shoot himself to death in order to annoy you. We know this from the American media, which wasted no time this morning in accusing the Russians of sabotaging their own infrastructure. Bill Kristol, the man who once told us that Saddam Hussein was responsible for 9/11, immediately denounced Putin as a war criminal and even more savagely compared him to Donald Trump. The rest of the pundit class made similar.
Yeah, I don't know if he was. So, hell, let's back it up.
Ukrainian general saying his men had fired American-made rockets at the dam's floodgate as a test strike. So really, once the facts start coming in, it becomes much less of a mystery what might have happened to the dam. Any fair person would conclude that the Ukrainians probably blew it up, just as you would assume they blew up Nord Stream, the Russian natural gas pipeline, last fall. And in fact, the Ukrainians did do that, as we now know. It's not like Vladimir Putin is anxious to wage war on himself. Oh, but that's where you're wrong, Mr. and Mrs. Cable News consumer. Vladimir Putin is exactly that sort of man, the sort of man who'd shoot himself to death in order to annoy you. We know this from the American media.
I don't know. It didn't sound like he was joking there. Sounded like he was pretty serious about it. That's pretty crazy.
Which wasted no time this morning in accusing the Russians of sabotaging their own infrastructure. Bill Kristol, the man who once told us that Saddam Hussein was responsible for 9/11, immediately denounced Putin as a war criminal and even more savagely compared him to Donald Trump. The rest of the pundit class made similar, clearly coordinated noises. Putin did it! Putin did it! And their reasoning was simple. Putin is evil, and evil people do evil things purely for the dark joy of being evil. In this specific case, Putin attacked himself, which is the most evil thing you can do.
Well, we know that didn't
perfectly
happen.
In character for a man that evil.
That's dumb to think.
That was their explanation. No one who's paid to cover these things seemed to entertain even the possibility it could have been Ukrainians who did it. No chance of that. Ukraine, as you may have heard, is led by a man called Zelensky. And we can say for a dead certain fact that he was not involved. He couldn't have been. Zelensky is too decent for terrorism. Now, you see him on television, and it's true you might form a different impression. Sweaty and rat-like, a comedian turned oligarch, a persecutor of Christians, a friend of BlackRock. But don't believe your own eyes. Actually, Mr. Zelensky is a very good man. The best, really. As George W. Bush once noted, he is our generation's Winston Churchill. Of all the people in the world, our shifty, dead-eyed Ukrainian friend in the tracksuit is uniquely incapable of blowing up a dam. He's literally a living saint, a man in whom there is no sin. That's why Lindsey Graham is so attracted to him. They're just two good people, hanging out together and being good. And like all good people, when they meet in person, they spend a lot of time talking about killing people and laughing like friends do. Here's the pair last week.
Free or die.
Free or die.
Now you are free.
Yes.
And we will be.
And the Russians are dying.
It's the best money we've ever spent.
Thank you so much.
No, it's
The Russians are dying. It's the best money we've ever spent, Graham says. A smile spreads
How
across
evil
his
is that,
thin,
bro?
quivering lips as he forms the words. He looks like a starving man contemplating a breakfast buffet. The aroma of death has aroused Lindsey Graham. Thanks so much, replies Zelensky. He feels the same way. See, there's nothing dark here. Just two middle-aged guys celebrating the killing of a population. They don't seem like the kind of people who'd enjoy flooding villages or starting a famine. And in any case, who cares if they are? It's really not your business. Your job is to support Ukraine. Watch Nikki Haley, a Republican candidate for president, explain this principle on CNN.
A win for Ukraine is a win for all of us. And for them to sit there and say that this is a territorial dispute, that's just not the case. To say that we should stay neutral, it is in the best interest of America. It's in the best interest of our national security for Ukraine to win. We have to see this through. We have to finish it.
What? Based on what? What does this rhino think that she's doing, yet alone entering the race against Donald Trump and trying to get Republican support? But what the hell are you talking about? It's in America's best interest that Ukraine be dominant. Why? Why? What does Ukraine do for America? I mean, like American citizens. Obviously, Ukraine is very beneficial for American politicians and Fortune 500 companies that want to embezzle and launder money, and for pharmaceutical companies who want to have illegal freaking mystery labs to conduct experiments in. I mean, it's good for all of them, for sure. But how in any way is it good for America that Ukraine beat Russia? What the... Oh, yeah. If Ukraine wins, then America gets the pipelines. That's probably the bet. That's probably the bet. If Zelensky's like, look, you help us beat Russia, and then America gets half the Russian oil. I wouldn't put it past him, folks. I would not put it past him.
See? It's very easy to understand. It is vitally important for you to support Ukraine because it's necessary for Ukraine to be supported by you. Your support is mandatory until it's finished, whatever it is, and whatever that means. So shut up and support Ukraine, or else you're in trouble. Back when they still taught logic, statements like this were known as tautologies. Something is true because it is. The more you repeat it, the truer it becomes. It's a self-reinforcing reality. There was a time when tautologies were considered illegitimate arguments, not to mention hilariously stupid. Only dumb people talk like that. Now everybody in power talks like that. Diversity is our strength. Trans women are women. Zelensky is Churchill. It's all self-evidently true. Doesn't need an explanation, and don't ask questions. Sound familiar? Of course,
That's 100% lunacy is what it is.
Serving us day after day
Lunacy.
in steaming, lumpy portions. By this point, it's possible that American citizens are the least informed people in the world. Your average yak herder in Tajikistan knows who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. It's obvious. Does he think some skinny dude in a dress is actually a girl? Come on. That idea would never occur to him. You've got to be lied to at full volume over a period of years in order to reach conclusions like that. And of course, we have been. The media lie. They do. But mostly they just ignore the stories that matter. What's happened to the hundreds of billions of US dollars we've sent to Ukraine? No clue. Who organized those BLM riots 3 years ago? No one's gotten to the bottom of that. What exactly happened on 9/11? Well, it's still classified. How did Jeffrey Epstein make all that money?
Wow.
How did he die? How about JFK? And so endlessly.
He went there, though. He went there on the 9/11 thing. Okay. Okay. That's definitely one thing that I know Tucker had an issue with Fox, is he said you could not mention Building 7 on Fox. You are not allowed to even mention the word Building 7 on Fox. I'm surprised he went there on that, though. I'm surprised.
On. Not only are the media not interested in any of this, they are actively hostile to anybody who is. In journalism, curiosity is the gravest crime. Yesterday, for example, a former Air Force officer who worked for years in military intelligence came forward as a whistleblower to reveal that the U.S. government has physical evidence of crashed non-human-made aircraft, as well as the bodies of the pilots who flew those aircraft.
Interesting.
The Pentagon has spent decades studying these otherworldly remains in order to build more technologically advanced weapons systems. Okay, that's what the former intel officer revealed, and it was clear he was telling the truth. In other words, UFOs are actually real, and apparently so is extraterrestrial life. Now we know. In a normal country, this news would qualify as a bombshell, the story of the millennium. But in our country, it doesn't.
Wait, what? Okay, so Tucker's talking like it's definitive. It's definitive. The U.S. has alien bodies, and we've been experimenting on them for decades. All the rumors are true. Everything's true. All the conspiracy theories are true. Okay, yeah. When we're done with this, we're going to dive into this some more. I want to go look up that guy's interview. I want to see the whole interview. This former intel officer guy, for sure.
The whistleblower's account ran on a technology website called The Debrief, which you've probably never heard of. The Washington Post had that story, but decided not to run it. The New York Times, meanwhile, just pretended
Remember
it never
that,
happened.
people.
On the front page of the New York Times website this morning, there were 5 stories about Ukraine, as well as 4 stories apiece about Donald Trump, trans people, and climate change, the usual lineup. There was nothing at all about how an alien species is flying hypersonic aircraft over our cities. Not one word. So if you're wondering why our country seems so dysfunctional, this is a big part of the reason. Nobody knows what's happening. A small group of people control access to all relevant information, and the rest of us don't know. We're allowed to yap all we want about racism, but go ahead and talk about something that really matters and see what happens. If you keep it up, they'll make you be quiet. Trust us.
Interesting.
That's how they maintain control. When Western tourists first started traveling in large numbers to the Soviet Union in the early 1970s, they found that many Russians had a completely warped understanding of the United States. They thought that Americans lived in grinding poverty, in a state of perpetual race war, and were desperate to flee to the freedom and prosperity of the Eastern Bloc. They thought this because that's what they had been told. They had no way to know otherwise. The few Russians who understood what was really going on in the rest of the world had learned about it from listening to shortwave radio broadcasts, sometimes under the covers so the neighbors wouldn't hear. 50 years later, it is bewildering to consider the ironies here. We're the ones who live in ignorance now. The US government has managed to classify more than 1 billion so-called public documents. So at this point, we can't possibly know what our leaders are doing. We're not allowed
Classified
to know.
1 billion
By
documents.
definition, that is not a democracy. Yet it's fine with the media. Secrecy is a powerful tool of control. Stop asking how we got so rich. Here's another story about racism. Go eat each other. That's the program. That's how most of us now live here in the United States.
That is the program.
Manipulated by lies, silenced by taboos. It is unhealthy and it's dehumanizing, and we're tired of it. As of today, we've come to Twitter, which we hope will be the shortwave radio under the blankets. We're told there are no gatekeepers here. If that turns out to be false, we'll leave. But in the meantime, we are grateful to be here. We'll be back with much more very soon.
Okay. Interesting stuff. So there's the first episode of Tucker Carlson on Twitter. That was very interesting. That was definitely very interesting. The majority of the show focused on Ukraine. So, like I said before the episode started, maybe that's one of the big things that Fox didn't want Tucker talking about on his show, his true feelings on Ukraine. I mean, he didn't come out and say it, but everybody knows the whole war is bullshit, and America started this for our benefit. You can't stop a war in Afghanistan and not start one up somewhere else. How else are we going to make money on weapons? You know, the industrial complex, so to speak, military complex especially, needs to make money. Needs to make money. And the bureaucrats and politicians need to keep the money flowing. So, interesting stuff, though. Definitely interesting stuff. I'm surprised. Even that one line that Tucker dropped about 9/11 is very interesting. And I wonder if he dropped a few of those other, topics there at the end as kind of like a future lineup of shows that he's going to do in the future. If you're new to the live, welcome. My name is Randall. This is the McClures. We react, review, we make fun of, we laugh at stuff. Links are in the description if you want to help support the channel. Follow me on socials and all that good stuff. Check it out. You can also shop McClures.com. It's a website I created to sell quality American products, help the country and the stream at the same time. This is for all you people that don't like to donate, but you like to buy stuff for yourself. We got you covered. Check out the links in the description. And we're going to get into this next episode of Tucker on Twitter. So this is episode 2 of Tucker on Twitter. He was discussing Ukraine in his last one. I don't think Ukraine is the subject that Fox News wanted him to talk about very much. So he addressed it on his first episode. I'm curious to see what he gets into on this one.
Hey, it's Tucker Carlson. Let's say you wanted to control a country. How would you start? Well, you'd want to make sure you had the complete obedience of everybody inside your borders who was authorized to use deadly force. You would start with the military, and then federal law enforcement, and move your way down ultimately to agencies like the IRS. Controlling the guns would be a top priority for you if you ever wanted to go dictatorial, if you wanted to be baby doc. But let's say you had deeper ambitions. Let's say you wanted the power not simply to control people's behavior, but to control how they think, not just their bodies, but their minds, as a god would. In that case, you need to take charge of the society's taboos. A taboo is something that by popular consensus is not allowed. A taboo may not be illegal, but it doesn't need to be. Over time, social prohibitions are more powerful and more enduring than laws. Societies are defined by what they will not permit, as are famously religions. Muslims don't eat pork, neither do Orthodox Jews. Traditional Christians oppose extramarital sex. The Amish avoid electricity, and so on. American society isn't overtly religious, but it's governed by taboos, and it always has been. What's interesting is how fast our taboos are changing. This is not happening organically. What we're allowed to dislike is being dictated to us from above, sometimes by force. Until fairly recently, for example, it was taboo in this country to attack people on the basis of their race. That was the main lesson of the Second World War, we were told, again and again. The one thing we learned from the Nazis is that it's dangerous to reduce human beings to their genetic code. There is no master race. That made sense, but apparently we no longer believe it.
Yeah, that's definitely no longer the case because you're allowed to attack white people all you want. That's facts. That's for sure.
Punishing people based on their skin color is not only permitted in modern America, it is mandatory throughout.
Comment on Rumble, that's facts. Salty. Tucker flew too close to the sun, aka Pfizer, got himself black rocketed. Got him black rocketed out of there.
Business and government and higher education, as long as the victims are white. At one time, that would have been unimaginable. So would the current behavior of our politicians. As recently as the 1992 presidential campaign, adultery was considered disqualifying for anyone seeking higher office. Bill Clinton was very nearly derailed in the New Hampshire primary by his affair with Jennifer Flowers. Clinton went to elaborate lengths to lie about the relationship because he had no choice. But he was the last presidential candidate who had to meet this standard. By 2008, it was obvious to anybody who was paying attention that Barack Obama had a strange and highly creepy personal life.
Yeah.
Yet nobody ever asked him about it. By that point, a leader's behavior within his own marriage, the core relationship of his life.
Yeah, Obama was selected to be president, so nobody cared how much coke or how many dicks he was sucking, bro. Nobody cared.
Have been declared irrelevant. It was Barack Obama's business, not yours. One by one, with increasing speed, our old taboos have been struck down. Those that remain have lost their moral force. Stealing, flaunting your wealth, striking women, smoking marijuana on the street, shameless public hypocrisy, taking other people's money for not working. All of these things used to be considered unacceptable in America, not anymore. So it probably shouldn't surprise us that the greatest taboo of all is teetering on the edge of acceptability: child molestation. A generation ago, talking to someone else's children about sex was widely considered grounds for a thrashing. Touching them sexually was effectively a death penalty offense.
Correct.
When Jeffrey Dahmer was bludgeoned to death in the bathroom of a Wisconsin prison in 1994,
Nobody
the
cared.
Milwaukee district attorney had to caution the public not to turn Dahmer's killer into a folk hero. Jeffrey Dahmer had molested and murdered children. People felt justified in celebrating his death.
Correct.
25 years later, that standard had changed dramatically in the state of Wisconsin, as in the rest of the country. In the summer of 2020, during the BLM riots in Kenosha, 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse defended his life from a convicted child molester called Joseph Rosenbaum. Rosenbaum was trying to kill Rittenhouse, so Rittenhouse shot him in self-defense. But it was Joseph Rosenbaum whom the media...
Shout out Rittenhouse for taking out that piece of shit.
...cast as the victim of the story. Kyle Rittenhouse, meanwhile, an underage boy fending off violence from a child molester, was denounced as the villain. Ultimately, he was indicted for murder. One of the things that this tells us is the people who run our country no longer see child molesters as the worst among us. It's never been more obvious.
Well, that's obvious because the ones that run the country are the child molesters. That's why. That's why.
Than it was yesterday when the Wall Street Journal ran a long expose about kiddie porn on Instagram. Instagram, the journal found, quote, helps connect and promote a vast network of accounts openly devoted to the commission and purchase of underage sex content. Instagram connects pedophiles and connects them to content sellers of child pornography. In one instance, the paper discovered that Instagram was recommending the phrase incest toddlers to users who'd expressed interest in similar material. By the way, no one at Instagram denied that any of this had happened, nor did Mark Zuckerberg, who controls the company. The journal story was accurate. It was all pretty shocking, but not as shocking as what happened next, which was effectively nothing at all. The largest circulation newspaper in the United States revealed that one of the world's most influential companies was promoting pedophilia, and nobody in power did anything about it. The Justice Department did not announce an investigation. Congress did not schedule hearings. The guy who runs Instagram, Adam Mosseri, still has his job. In fact, Mosseri's last tweet, which is pinned, is a video of himself bragging about how effective Instagram's algorithm is. Keep in mind as you watch this, it's real.
People often talk about the algorithm, but there is no one algorithm for Instagram. There are many algorithms and ranking processes we use to try to personalize the experience to make it as interesting as we can for each and every person who uses Instagram. We believe in this idea of personalization. What you're interested in and what I'm interested in is different, and so therefore your Instagram and my Instagram should be different.
What you're interested in and what I'm interested in is different, Mosseri explains patiently. So your Instagram feed will be different from mine. You're interested in children, that's why you're getting all the incest toddler posts. It's a highly personalized experience. That tweet is still up tonight. Of course, everybody at Instagram, in fact, everyone everywhere in authority, will still claim to think that child molestation is bad, but the tone has changed unmistakably. When they say it's bad, they mean it in a kind of abstract way. Bad like a civil war in Central Africa is bad. You wouldn't prefer it, but there are reasons it happens. That's why we now refer to pedophiles as minor attracted persons, because honestly, who can judge? These people are a sexual minority, so pause before you attack them. And in any case, it's not like pedophiles are barging into the Capitol building to sit in Nancy Pelosi's chair or asking uncomfortable questions about the last election. For miscreants like that, no punishment is too harsh. So far this month, the FBI's Washington field office has issued 11 press releases. 10 out of 11 have been about January 6th. Keep in mind that January 6th happened more than 2.5 years ago. Now you know why the feds were ignoring kid touchers on Instagram. They're too busy to respond. They've got much more important things to do, like finding white supremacists. White supremacists are America's new child molesters. We've got zero tolerance for white supremacists because no one threatens the life of this country more than they do. Here's Joe Biden once again making that very clear last month.
To stand up against the poison of white supremacy, as I did my inaugural address, to single out as the most dangerous terrorist threat to our homeland is white supremacy. And I'm not saying this because I'm at a black HBCU. I say it wherever I go.
Pardon the feedback, but you heard the point. White supremacy is the most dangerous threat to the American homeland. Joe Biden just told us that. It's more dangerous than the threat of nuclear war with Russia. It's more dangerous than the threat of the Mexican drug cartels, who've already killed hundreds of thousands of Americans and are now in control of swaths of our southwestern states. White supremacy is that bad, Joe Biden says. In fact, it's worse. But what is it? That's the question. Can anyone in authority actually define white supremacy? What is it? Is white supremacy liking white people too much? If so, that's going to put those of us with white children in a pretty tough spot. Or is white supremacy something much more obviously bad, like trying to expel all non-whites from America and creating some kind of ethno-state?
Yeah, but who's
if
doing
that's
that?
Joe Biden's definition, what exactly is the scope of this threat?
Exactly.
How many people are currently working on this American white ethno-state project?
Yeah, how many people want a white ethno state? That's got to be what, less than 200 people out of the entire country?
And what are the chances they're going to pull it off? Our guess is not very many and precisely zero. But we can't say for sure because no one has showed us the numbers. These are not rhetorical questions. When the President of the United States describes something as the worst possible crime Americans can commit, you have a right to know what that crime is. You used to have that right. Under our pre-revolutionary legal code before George Floyd, questions like these were easy to answer. A crime was defined as something that an elected legislature had explicitly banned, usually an act that hurt somebody else. In America, crimes were described precisely with words in English and then preserved in books, which you could read yourself. If you ever wondered whether you were committing a crime, you could just look it up.
Right.
You could know for sure whether you were a criminal. Now you can't. And needless to say, that's the point. The point of the exercise is to keep you off balance, to keep you afraid. When no one's willing to define the offense, you can't be sure whether or not you're committing it. You could be accused at any time and everything you have taken from you. You live in fear. Remember this guy?
Emmanuel Cafferty was driving near a Black Lives Matter protest in Poway in his SDG&E truck when he says he noticed somebody following him and trying to get his attention. Later, that person posted a picture of him making what some believed is a white supremacy symbol on Twitter. Cafferty says he had no idea about any white power symbols and was just cracking his knuckles outside his window when the picture was taken of him. Later that day, he says he was notified by SDG&E that he would be suspended pending an investigation, and a few days later, he was fired.
What that man did was so offensive, as you just saw, that local news had to blur the photograph of his hand. He was fired from his job. His life was destroyed for cracking his knuckles. He didn't know cracking his knuckles was racist, in his defense, but then nobody did until the day that poor Emmanuel Cafferty was unwise enough to crack them.
Imagine that. Fired and put on the news because you cracked your knuckles and somebody got a video of it. Or a photo of it. Yeah, the world has gone bananas.
A crime has no definition. Anyone can be guilty of it. It's hard to relax in a country like that. The old system was better. Government operated on the basis of laws, not amorphous moral terror. Politicians couldn't accuse you of something they couldn't define. The legal code was straightforward. Child molestation was a crime. Having unfashionable opinions was not. Outside of the public sphere, the population mostly governed itself, as it does in every society, and used taboos to do it. You knew what was allowed and what wasn't because the rules didn't change very often. The taboos were organic. They derived from collective experience and instinct, the two most reliable guides to life. They evolved for a reason. They still do. Our job at this point is to protect them, despite the hectoring, the nonstop hectoring from the people in charge. You know the outlines of right and wrong. You were born knowing them. So don't let them talk you out of what you can smell. Don't let them rationalize away your intuitive moral sense. Cling to your taboos like your life depends on them, because it does. Cherish and protect them like family heirlooms. That's exactly what they are.
Okay. So there's episode 2 of Tucker. Episode 2 of Tucker on Twitter. Pretty interesting stuff. Let me know what you guys think about Tucker's new show and what else he should do with it, because it looks like he does a monologue and, you know, maybe one story segment or something. Maybe he's gonna slowly expand it or increase it or what have you. We don't know. But we're glad that he didn't just take off like this picture and just go fishing, because he does have a needed voice in America, and people listen. People do listen to him. So if you're tuning into this as a video, then come check out the lives. We are live Monday, Wednesdays, and Friday. We're going to keep going on the live today. But check the links in the description, shopmcclures.com, if you want to help support and all that good stuff. We appreciate you. Later, bye.